time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
And we are live. Greetings to our loyal WFYL listeners around the world. Welcome back to your Philadelphia live stream, only on the Freedom Station. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in once again, because you still have the right to hear and the right to be heard. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mike G. As always, with me are Philly Chris, Russ the producer, and Liberty Lee. And you're listening to Mike G in the morning with The Law Matters. And you can listen to our program every Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So let's be heard. I want to remind our listeners that you can participate in the free and open exchange of thoughts and ideas throughout the entire week by visiting MikeGinTheMorning.com. What's it called, Philly Chris?
MikeGinTheMorning.com.
How about you, Russ?
MikeGinTheMorning.com.
Liberty, are you with us?
MikeGinTheMorning.com.
That is correct. You can check out all the shenanigans that Mike G and Philly Chris are up to throughout the entire week. Check out our shorts. Don't forget to like them and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your barber, tell your Uncle Jerry, tell anybody who'll listen to check us out at MikeGinTheMorning.com. I also want to remind our listeners about the powerhouse lineup we've got here at the Freedom Station. Kick off your mornings with Scott Adams. Bring you the Scott Adams Show weekdays from 9 a.m. until 11. We've got Dan the Man Bongino. Bring you the Dan Bongino Show weekdays from noon until 3 p.m. We've got the headliner, intellectual giant Ben Shapiro. Bring you the Ben Shapiro Show weekdays from 3 to 5 p.m. And finally, we love having him at the Freedom Station family. We've got Michael Knowles. Bring you the Michael Knowles Show weekdays from 5 to 6 p.m. So don't forget to tune in and show him some love. And with that, you know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. Hit it, Russ.
You know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
We've got quite a few members of the Mike G in the Morning family tuning in. We've got Rita checking in. Give her a hey now, Philly Chris.
Hey now, Rita. Hey now.
Hey now. How about Dag Nabbit? Dag Nabbit checking in. Give him a hey now.
Welcome back, Dag Nabbit. Hey now.
Hey now. DG checking in. Give DG a hey
DG, you're live with us. Hey now.
Hey now, DG. And we got the Finisland checking in. Give the Finisland a hey now.
Hey now, to Finisland. Ladies and gentlemen, we love to Finisland. Hey now.
Hey now. We got Stacks Farmstead checking in. Give Stacks a hey now.
Yo, Stacks. Hey now.
Hey now. And Stacks also says, I have a turkey who may need representation. I told him he needs to contact the turkey law firm.
Yeah.
Turkey law firm will get them all squared away.
You could open up a new division, Mike.
Yeah, that's we've been talking about that for quite some time. You know, we often prank people at the office, the younger guys, the legal interns, once a year. We try not to do it exactly on April 1st because that gets somewhat predictable. But somewhere around April 1st, we tried to play jokes. We played a joke one year where I told a couple of the guys who worked for me that I don't know what brought it about. We were doing a seminar at this hunting conference that was going on. I got put on to teach a gun law class at a hunting seminar. And like the main speaker of the entire conference was a gentleman who was talking about turkey hunting, and it was called Talking Turkey.
Talking Turkey, okay.
It was fascinating. I'm not a turkey hunter or anything, but I sat through the whole thing and I really enjoyed it. But when I first found out that I was going to be speaking at this conference and I saw the other things on the agenda, I asked if we were changing it from gun law seminar to turkey law seminar.
There we go. Nice.
And
I do have a turkey with me here right now, actually.
That rolled into a separate joke where I told a couple of the guys at the office that there's this untapped market for turkey law, and we were going to be opening up a whole new division with turkey law. And of course, you always have one guy who's like, this is ridiculous, but I'm not going to say anything. And you have one guy who's saying, that's a magnificent idea, Mike. Absolutely. Why didn't I think of that sooner?
Whatever you say, Mike, it's a good idea.
So that was one of them. That was one of them. So this is not the first discussion of having the turkey law firm.
There we go. Hey, you never know these days.
We got Michael Clay checking in. Give him a hey now.
Yeah, hey now, Michael Clay. Hope he's doing well.
Hey now. So I know that today we wanted to discuss a little bit about homicide cases and a little bit from a defense attorney's perspective. I think there are a lot of misconceptions when it comes to these cases and how they unfold. I think people have a false sense of reality as gun owners or people who are at all willing to defend themselves as to how these things actually play out in the court of law. And I want to talk a little bit about that and maybe some just generic non-legal stuff about how this impacts people and a life-changing experience. You know, people think that when they purchase a firearm and they get trained up and they're prepared to protect themselves and their loved ones, that if they have to do so, that will be the end of the road. Unfortunately, that is not the case under any circumstance. There's a lot that happens in the aftermath, whether it's legally, whether it's mentally, and it's something that I think people ought to know more about, just so that they could be adequately prepared. God forbid they're ever in that position. And I think once you know more about it, you pray that you are never in that position. And typically that's the attitude I do see from the people I encounter who come out to seminars. These are people who purchase a firearm. They pray that they never, ever, ever have to use it. But God forbid it came down to it, they would be willing to protect themselves or to protect their loved ones. And that's really what it's all about. I don't meet people who really can't wait to kill somebody. I know the media wants to portray it as gun owners can't wait to kill somebody, and that's why they buy guns. That is not the type of person that I meet at my seminars or in my practice. But even the people who realize that it's not something to be taken lightly and that their life will change, I don't think they truly understand the ins and outs of it, because how could you? How could you if you've not gone through it? And this is not something that people discuss on a regular basis. And there are also a lot of people who portray false information about the aftermath, unfortunately, in our own industry. I remember years ago watching a television program, and it was a pro-gun self-defense type program. And they were explaining the aftermath of a critical incident, and they were sort of giving advice as to how to handle it. And the guy was saying, calmly and politely explain to the law enforcement officers what happened. And they're showing like a dramatization of a guy sort of going through the motions, talking with his hands, cool as a cucumber. And I said, this is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous to think that that is what you are going to look like in the aftermath of a critical incident.
Right.
Because we deal with people on our end. I deal with a lot of retired law enforcement officers who work with me in a private capacity now. And these are guys who have been in multiple critical incidents while they were in law enforcement. And what they always tell me is their third, their fourth, their fifth critical incident is no better in terms of the physiological effects in the aftermath than their first critical incident. And it's something that takes a whole lot out of you.
Yeah.
And to think that you're going to be sitting there cool as a cucumber, sort of explaining things politely and
just calmly, be able to tamper down millions of years of evolution.
It's total fantasy land. And there was an article out there. I'm trying not to laugh when I heard some of my colleagues' comments about this article. There was an article out there, and the premise of the article was attorneys will always tell you to lawyer up and shut up, but that's not really always a great idea. It's much better to be able to give a calm and collected statement. And one of my colleagues said something like, yeah, and it's also nice to be James Bond, you know.
Right.
I'm sure in an ideal world, maybe that would be helpful, but that's just not reality.
Yeah.
We got Randy checking in. Give Randy a hey now.
Hey now, Randy. Hey now.
Hey now, Randy.
Welcome to the show.
So, Chris, you know, as somebody who's on the civilian side of things, and not to say that I'm not a civilian, but somebody who's not a criminal defense attorney, and you've never been involved in a critical incident in terms of having to use deadly force to protect yourself or your family, what are some things that you think about the whole process in and of itself. And I know that you're educated in terms of this stuff from having been to a million seminars, having worked for U.S. Law Shield, been around this stuff and been through a whole lot of training. In the paper one time, remember
Oh
that
yeah,
when
right.
you were helping with the active shooter training?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Do
That's
you
right.
remember that?
Yeah, I
Was
kind
it
of forgot about
what
it, but that's
county was
right.
that?
Yeah. Where was that? It was some
It was
out
far
west
away.
somewhere, I think. Was it Lehigh maybe or something? Or I forget.
No, it was way
No,
further than
no.
that. I want to say
Yeah,
like
it was.
Blair
It was
County
pretty.
or something.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I forget. Yeah, it was a while ago. I got the article around somewhere. I'll have to
It was
try to find it.
very,
Yeah,
very far.
yeah, that was pretty
But
funny.
when you did that, just as a side note, I
Hmm.
had somebody send me some kind of a Reddit post the day after that when they saw the signs saying, "Hey, there are active shooter drills," basically
Oh
accusing
yeah.
us of being, crisis actors and everything like that,
Yeah, that's
preparing for
right.
some
Yeah, I
kind of
remember that.
false flag
Hmm.
operation.
Yeah, yeah. It was kind of interesting to
That's
be on the other
wild, right?
side of that. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how
Yeah,
people make assumptions. So
yeah.
it's a reminder too not to assume things. Yeah, yeah.
So what would your thoughts be about the aftermath of a critical incident? Like, what do you think that this all plays out like from your standpoint, having not been through it and everything? Because I'm interested to hear what a common person thinks about how
Hmm.
this stuff
Hmm.
plays out, and even as somebody who's a little bit more educated about it, how do you think it works?
As far as like what happens immediately after, you're saying, like if you're
Yeah,
the
yeah.
individual in that,
You
yeah,
have
I
to
mean,
defend yourself. Now what?
right, right, yeah, I mean, fortunately, like you said, I've been around you and Law Shield and had some additional training compared to probably the average person, and kind of know better. But even being in some situations that I wouldn't call critical incidents, but situations that might get your heart going a little bit. It's so easy to forget what you're supposed to do, and unfortunately, most people do, and they kind of get into that mindset where they feel like they need to talk or explain, away what happened, and give up their right to remain silent so easily. And I know I've been with you when situations have literally happened. You get those calls and you're like literally screaming at the client trying to calm them down and be quiet. So it's like, just
Right.
listen to your attorney. I mean,
Well, there is this overwhelming need to try to vindicate yourself in the
mhm,
aftermath of
sure.
these things because you want somebody to tell you that what you did was okay,
Yeah, you need that justification, right? Yeah.
regardless of
Mhm.
how clear cut the situation may or may not have been. It could be something where any reasonable person looks at it objectively and
Right,
says, "Hey, this person's not only justified, but they're a hero. They saved the day."
right.
I've used that before where I talk to law enforcement. I say, "What are you going to charge them with? Saving the day?"
Right, right.
But even
Yeah.
people in that situation, there's always a period where you second guess yourself because your mind
Sure.
is not right. So, with that being said, I want anybody who is in the live stream, there are two primary rights that you want to exercise in the aftermath of a critical incident. I want you to tell us what they are. If you're watching the video after the fact, I want you to do me a favor because there's no cheating involved. I want you to pause this video and I want you to type in the comments what you think those two primary rights are to exercise in the aftermath of a critical incident. So pause it and put your answer in the comments.
Mhm,
Once you've done
mhm.
that, then you can come back and check to see what the answer is. And people in the live stream, go ahead and comment what are the two primary rights that you want to exercise in the aftermath of a critical incident. I don't have the ability to throw up a poll the way I have in the past
Oh,
right
yeah?
now.
Oh, right. Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I do not, but
Yeah.
go ahead and answer it in the comments.
Well, we got Denise jumping in there. Hey now,
Okay.
Denise. Hey now.
And DG says, I wanted to throw a Mike G card out of my window and then answers. as, she says, I was driving through South Bethlehem Tuesday and saw a young guy handcuffed on the side of the road with two policemen.
Mm.
I stopped right in front of them as they were off to the side. Traffic had backed up. Wanted to throw a Mike G card out my window. I'm often
That's
tempted to
funny.
do that. Just stop and get out and be like, I'm his attorney. Stop talking to him. He's not answering any more questions. He doesn't consent to any searches. Get a
Right.
warrant. So
It's not a bad
DG
idea,
mentions that
actually.
the colloquial term that we use for the two rights. Okay.
Mhm.
Dag Nabbit gave his answer. Stack gave his answer. He gave half the answer.
Mhm.
I see a correct answer from Dag Nabbit. I see
There you
a
go.
half correct answer from Stack's Farmstead.
Good
Let's see
job,
who else
everybody.
pipes in. Let's see who else pipes in with the correct answer. If you are playing at home, the correct answer is what? What do we commonly say? DG said it in her comment. What is that? What are the
You want me to
rights,
say it?
Philly Chris?
Can I say it the way you
Yeah,
say it at the seminars?
say it the way I say it at the
Yeah.
seminars because you'll never forget it.
Lawyer up and shut up.
Lawyer up and shut up. That is correct, sir. So what does that come down to? Dag Nabbit says the right to an attorney and the right to remain silent. Stacks Farmstead said the right to remain silent. That is incredibly important. And Randy even offers a way to articulate those rights. Officer, I will cooperate any way I can, but not without speaking to my attorney first.
Yeah, that's
The
good.
Supreme Court has said that you must clearly and unambiguously invoke your rights to silence and to an attorney, so much so that we've got the lawyer dog case. And if you've never heard of the lawyer dog case, a guy was being arrested and said, I want a lawyer dog. And the whole question became whether he had clearly and unambiguously invoked his rights. The court dealing with the case said he had not, because somebody could confuse what he said for requesting a dog who
As
was
his attorney?
also an attorney. That's correct.
Well, maybe
Yes.
next time you should have asked for a turkey lawyer.
That is you got to ask for a turkey lawyer. Is asking for a turkey lawyer better than saying I want a lawyer dog?
I think so, because you're saying it's a turkey lawyer, which maybe would
Turkey lawyer.
be a real person that represents, like a real lawyer that represents Turkey, as opposed to a dog that's an attorney. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, it's great, right? That's great. Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia always says that he specializes in bird law. I wonder if turkey law is a subset of bird law.
Could be. I mean, birds aren't real, so you know.
DG says, hold on while I call one of the Justice brothers and hand them Mike and Rich's cards I keep in my visor.
There we go.
That also works, right? So ultimately, where do these rights come from? They come from our Constitution, and often I find that people are hesitant to exercise their rights out of fear of looking like they've done something wrong or looking like they're guilty. And my justice brother, Richard Roberts, often says, well, would you rather look like you're guilty at home or feel like you're innocent in jail? So that's one way to look at it. And I will tell you this, people who have been through the criminal justice system often have no problem making the effort to lawyer up and shut up because they've been through that system before. And that's the difference between them and most of the people we deal with, where they've never been in trouble before. Somebody who's had to defend themselves by their nature, you've gone through the process, you've lawfully purchased a firearm, you got a license to carry, you have to be generally a law-abiding citizen to have those things, right? You can't have something that disqualifies you or prohibits you. So these are not people who are career criminals and been through the system. As I like to say, it's not their first rodeo. And that's why often career criminals are better prepared to deal with the criminal justice system than the average person, unfortunately, because they've got that experience from the school of hard knocks. So there's a rude awakening for a lot of people who think that it's simple enough to just tell the police the truth, not realizing the physiological effects that come in the aftermath of a critical incident. So the constitutional right to an attorney and the constitutional right against self-incrimination come from the Fifth and Sixth Amendments, right? The Fifth Amendment, that's the shut up part. The Sixth Amendment, that's the lawyer up part. And our constitutional rights are for law-abiding citizens just as much as they are for anybody else. There's this other misconception that, you know, the constitutional rights that are involved in lawyer up and shut up are solely for people who are guilty. But I don't believe our founding fathers sat in a circle somewhere and said, hey, you know, what could we put in this Constitution thing that'll let all the bad guys go free? I think they had an understanding that our constitutional rights are for law-abiding, hardworking citizens, and there's nothing wrong with exercising those rights. So that's an important component of the aftermath. Now, if you're involved in a situation where you do have to defend yourself and you're taken into police custody, Michael Clay says, how come they can lie during an investigation?
Yeah, that's a good question.
The agents of the government can lie because the government says so, right?
That about sums it up nicely. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you lie,
unfortunately,
yeah,
when you look at the way these cases shake out, it's, I know we have the separation of powers in the branches of government and everything like that, but it's really a sort of a circular reasoning type thing when you have the government upholding the government's own authority.
Yeah.
So the answer is because.
Yeah, because.
I don't have a good explanation for that as far as, oh, well, they really need to be able to lie to you for reasons X, Y, and Z. I don't agree with that because we're obviously not supposed to lie to the police. And I would never encourage somebody to lie to the police. There's a difference between lying to the police and refusing to make any statements. We all hear those Miranda warnings from the time that we're very young. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. And I've said this before, for whatever reason, you have otherwise intelligent human beings who sit across from a law enforcement officer in the aftermath of a critical incident, and that law enforcement officer tells them out loud, I want you to say something out loud that I can use against you in court to put you in jail for a very, very long time. Would you mind helping me out by doing so? And people say, sure, let's give it a shot. It makes no sense when you think about it, right?
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah. It's interesting too. A lot of police have, I've had a conversation, I know you have too, where they've even said after they read them their rights, they're amazed how many people will continue to talk. And they even sort of like subtly remind them and encourage them to, but they just talk away. People just like to talk. So not a good situation.
Yeah. You have rights here. Why not exercise those rights? Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely the truth. Have you ever been in a situation where a law enforcement officer was questioning you for whatever reason and you had to assert your right to silence an attorney?
Me?
Yeah. No, the other guy who's on the program right now.
I didn't know if you were asking like all the listeners again.
All the listeners, hold on. That's a good one. Before you give your answer, all the listeners, let us know, have you ever had to actually assert your right to silence an attorney? Have you had to do that out loud? Have you been in that situation? If you're watching after the fact, press pause, type it in the comments. Have you had to be in a situation where you asserted your rights to counsel and your right to silence? Chris, why don't you go ahead and tell us your answer?
I have actually. I've even done it during traffic stops, Now I've done the opposite where I have talked to the officer and answered some questions, probably that I didn't need to. And I guess in those situations it was sort of okay. But going forward, generally I will just, say I'm not really, I'd like to cooperate. I'm not really interested in answering questions. They don't need to know where you're going or what you're doing or all that. I guess it depends on what you're getting pulled over for and how much you want to press their buttons. But never a bad idea to just kind of give them less information. Here's my driver's license. Here's my paperwork. Do you know why you're being stopped today? No idea, officer. No idea. Why don't you let me know? Yeah.
I always thought that was interesting. Where are you coming from? What have you been up to? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm sorry. Did you pull me over because my tail light was out? Or
right.
Because where I was coming from. Is that going to change whether or not I get a ticket for the tail light?
Does
that impact your investigation about my tail light or my expired registration? I did have in Oklahoma one time. I was driving from a hotel where my parents were staying back to my apartment. And of course I got the beat up looking car. For some reason you look like you're up to no good when you drive a real beat up looking car. And I got long hair down to my shoulders. And this guy followed me out of the parking lot and he tailed me for almost the whole way back to my apartment. And there's a stop sign right before the parking lot to the apartment. And I really made sure that I double stopped pretty much because I knew he was behind me.
Stop twice. That's a good idea.
And I make the turn, and of course he lights me up anyhow. He comes out.
Mm.
So the reason I pulled you over, you stopped improperly. I forget how he came up with what I did, whether I went too
Oh,
far or didn't
geez,
go
wow.
far enough.
Right.
I stopped too short of the stop sign the first time and too far the second time. It was something ridiculous. And then he says, "Where are you coming from?" I said, my parents are staying at the hotel down the road, and I came from over there going back to my apartment. He said, "That parking lot you came over from, that doesn't go to the hotel." And I said, "I'm sorry, sir, but I'm afraid you're mistaken. It's
Mm.
exactly where I was." And he said, "I know that parking lot and I know where it comes from, and
Oh
that does not
gosh.
come from the hotel.
Mm.
And you're lying to me." And I said, "I don't know what to tell you, but I'm afraid you made a mistake of some
Sure.
kind."
Yeah, that's exactly what he wants to hear, right? That he made a
And
mistake.
I'm afraid you don't know what you're talking about.
How about we go back, officer?
He
You're
said,
not from around here, huh? Where were you going?
You're right, though. He did say, like, "I didn't make any
Yeah,
mistake. I know that
of
doesn't
course,
go
yeah.
back to the
And you're
hotel."
actually saying it in a nice way, but you're
I
illustrating
was,
a great point with the story. Like, it doesn't
yeah,
matter, you know?
I was trying to explain it, and I didn't know any better back then.
Mhm.
And at some point, he said, "You're lying." And I said, "Listen, if you'd like, I could pull over. I could get in your car with you. We could. I'll even sit in the back if you want.
Yeah, yeah. Can you
Just
arrest me real fast,
just
officer? We'll
drive
take a
me
ride.
back over there. I'll show you exactly where I came out of. I could call my parents. They could come downstairs. You could
Right.
see them if
That's
that's what
pretty
you're
funny.
interested in. You get a cup of coffee at the IHOP if you want."
Yeah, right, yeah.
I,
You need a
I don't
donut,
know what else you
officer?
want from me, but this is the way it is. And so he went back to his vehicle. He comes back and he said to me, "Listen, man, that hotel must be the parking lot must be new over at that hotel. I
Must
know
be
that
new.
the
Yeah.
hotel's fairly new, and they
Okay.
must have just built that parking lot. It used to come from some back alley where people used to go to drink and do drugs and
Oh,
stuff like
interesting.
that." So
Oh, okay.
yeah, he said,
Well,
and his exact words were, "My bad, man. I didn't know." So, you know, I kind of took the fact that he said that. I kind of felt better about it at the end because I was like, well, at least he owned up to the
yeah,
fact that he
yeah,
was totally
that's
wrong.
cool. I mean, but it's funny how sure he was minutes earlier and literally basically was accusing you of something and following you because he just was making assumptions about what you were doing there, which
Yeah,
obviously happens a lot. So yeah.
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 Well, ultimately, you have every right to lawyer up and shut up. And the reason I asked you if you have done so is because I find that people, when they're in the moment and they're being questioned by law enforcement officers and they truly feel like they've done nothing wrong,
Mhm.
even if they have it in their head to lawyer up and shut up, it's very, 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 very difficult to do so.
Sure, sure. And most people think they seem to have this skill that other people don't have where they
Right.
can talk themselves out of a situation, you know? And I guess we all, generally want to think we can handle ourselves in those situations, but that is a double-edged sword and a catch-22 because, once you open your mouth and as soon as you say the wrong thing or give them information that you don't realize you're giving them that they can use in any way, shape, or form against you, it's going to happen. So yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. You talk
Mhm.
about give them information that they can use and say the wrong thing. And the
Yeah.
wrong thing isn't necessarily a lie or something that's
Right.
even
Right.
incriminating, right? You could
Yeah,
say
and that's what I
something,
mean. Like, plus I think you made a good point earlier, Mike. Sorry to interrupt you, but like about the lying, like you don't know that what they're writing down is what you said.
right?
And they
Yeah.
could write down. I mean, I learned that from you. Like they could write
Well,
down
there's
whatever
so many
they don't want to write down.
possibilities for things to go against you. It's
Mhm.
not even just lying, it's also a mistranslation.
You're right.
I had a
Miscommunication. Yeah,
I
yeah.
had a case years ago, like many years ago, where the person was contacted by police. I called in to the police officer. I had a talk with this guy. I tried to talk him out of filing charges altogether, and he wasn't able or willing to do so. But we had a
Mhm.
pretty lengthy conversation when he led up to that. And when I got the affidavit of probable cause, it said, "I spoke to her attorney and he said A, B, C, D, and E." And it totally wasn't what I said to him.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So first of all, it was totally, completely improper for him to put what I allegedly said in the affidavit of
Yeah, that
probable
sounds
cause.
like an odd thing
It's
to
totally
document
inappropriate.
because you're the lawyer that you're right.
Totally inappropriate. And second of all, it was completely, completely different than what I said. And maybe I say completely different because legally it's completely different, right?
Right.
There's
Mhm.
significance to every word that I say when I have
Mhm.
these conversations with these law enforcement officers.
Sure.
And if you take one or two words and change them, you might not necessarily think it's a big deal on that end, but
Mhm.
legally, I
Mhm.
know that it makes a world of the difference.
Yeah, I got you. Right.
You know, a few words being off can completely change the
Yeah, they're
trajectory.
summarizing in a way that doesn't represent it legally the same way. Yeah.
I ended up, I had a contact who used to work at that department, and I said, "Hey, who do I talk to about this?" He gave me the chief's
Mhm.
number. Chief, I work with this guy. You apparently know him very well.
Mhm.
I'm calling you out of a courtesy because he says that you're a decent enough guy.
Mhm.
Here's what happened. It's obviously completely inappropriate. I'm not trying to get this guy in trouble. I don't think that he intentionally misquoted me,
Mhm. Mhm.
but he also shouldn't be saying anything about discussions with counsel in the affidavit of probable cause. Uh,
Was he a newer officer? Did
Turns out he was almost brand spanking
Okay.
new, the guy.
Okay. So
And I
that
said, I'm
makes
not
okay.
trying to get him in trouble. I'm not
Right.
saying that he was, uh, doing anything malicious or anything like that.
Mhm.
But and I know that this isn't right and this needs to be taken care of.
Mhm.
And so the next day they withdrew that affidavit and
Oh, okay. Well, that's
filed
good.
a new
Well, I
one.
mean, it sounds like you handled it well. I mean, I've been around you long enough to see the way you handle things, and you're very diplomatic, which is important when you're an
Mm.
attorney. Obviously, you don't
You
want
pick your
to.
battles, right?
Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah.
But
I mean, you're not doing
ultimately,
your client any favors if you start a huge argument over that either, right?
over
Yeah.
nothing, right?
Yeah.
Something that
Right.
could be resolved
Hmm.
amicably.
Hmm.
So the reason I bring that up is if they're going to misquote me, whether intentionally or not, what do you think is going to happen to you, right?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
If they're going to misquote me
Oh yeah.
inappropriately,
Well,
then
right.
it's going to
Sure.
happen to everybody, right?
Yeah, no, it's such an important thing, and every now and then, I know you have these conversations too, whether it's at a seminar, or gun show, or just a person you might be talking to when you're out somewhere, and they always say, "Well, I'm not doing anything wrong. I got nothing to worry about. I'll talk to the cops. I didn't do anything. I'm a good person." Blah 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 blah. And it's like, well, at the end of the day, that may be true, 100% true, but you say something, they document or whatever, or maybe you get a cop that, most cops are good, but you get a cop who wants to, you know, uh, use their authority over you, which happens. We see that, or plant drugs in your vehicle, whatever, so just
I've often
stay
thought about trying
quiet.
to do some kind of exercise where somebody goes through some degree of a critical incident, right? Where you can't completely replicate it, obviously, but give them some kind of experience that gets
Mm,
that adrenaline going and everything, and then
yeah.
asking them what to describe what happened,
Hmm.
and then show them how it actually happened on tape because it's going to be completely different. And I think that's one of the major problems that we see when people make these statements is their mind's not in the state to be making these statements. There's a reason why law enforcement officers all over the country have periods of time after critical
Hmm.
incident where
Yeah.
they have hours before they have to make a statement.
Yes.
And
Right.
having
That's right.
that 72 hours, the reason is for the physiological effects that take place in the aftermath of that critical incident.
Hmm.
So uh, uh, when you take all of that into account, that's why you want to lawyer up and shut up. And if something's on tape, you may have said everything as you recalled it,
Hmm.
but then when they look back at the video, it doesn't line up. What does that make you look like?
Right. That's right. Yeah. Then it looks like you're
When
misrepresenting
they go
it at
back
a
and they look at
minimum.
that video and it doesn't line
Hmm.
up, even if you thought you're Liberty's talking about Michael Clay mentioned something about these constitutional auditors.
Yeah. Do you
All
ever
the
watch
social
those
media
videos, Mike?
Constitution orders videos seem like all the cops get butthurt, then double down.
Mhm.
Occasionally, the problem
Yeah.
with those videos, you watch one, you end up watching for 4 hours, right?
That's true. Make some popcorn and sit back and watch. Yeah, yeah. I watch a bunch of those. It is interesting because I think he does bring up a good point, and Liberty was good. It's good to point it out. I don't think they are really trained that well from a de-escalation standpoint. What are your thoughts, Mike, on that?
I think that part of it is they recognize when somebody is simply trying to give them a hard time, right? But there is definitely a
Mm,
part of it where they don't understand constitutional rights. I had a
mhm,
discussion with a law enforcement officer one time where they were denying the client access to the attorney, well, to me, and I was saying I need to speak with my
mhm,
client. They said, "Yeah, we're not letting you back there." I said, "You understand he's got a constitutional right to counsel. This is like first day of law school
mm.
stuff, right?" And I said, "Yeah, but we're not letting you back
We
there." I said, "Well,
don't really care about that,
you're denying him a constitutional right. You've got an interest in having this investigation buttoned up just as much as I do, because otherwise we're going to
Mhm,
end up in court fighting over it and all the evidence that gets thrown out because your constitutional violation." And he said, "Yeah, but it causes a whole bunch of practical problems. Then I got to let all the attorneys up there all day." I said, "Listen, I don't care what the practical problems are. He's
mhm.
got a constitutional right to counsel." And he
Yeah.
said, "But what's the difference? I'm not going to ask him any questions. You told me no statements. So what's the difference?" I said, "The difference is he's got a constitutional right, and the Constitution and the Constitution doesn't say he's got a right to counsel unless the cop is really cool and won't ask him any questions once you invoke his right to silence."
Right, right. Yeah,
Uh,
right.
but there is that sort of disconnect sometimes when it comes to these constitutional rights and law enforcement officers. Um, Michael
How
Clay
often does
said,
that happen,
"Do they
Mike?
really not get trained for this stuff?"
Mm,
Interesting point. I had somebody on this program named Scott Henninger, who was teaching constitutional law in a criminal justice program years ago. And he came on the show shortly after he left. And the reason why he left was they decided to cut constitutional law from the criminal justice program.
Oh, yeah,
And
that sounds like a great idea.
they asked him to teach another class. And he said, "Why are we cutting constitutional law?" They said, "Well, we really don't think it's important for criminal justice." He said, "This is the problem with the way these younger folks are being
Mm,
trained."
mhm.
So that there certainly is an issue. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a guy I can call right now and get on this program. He's probably long overdue. I want to have him on this program. He's
Mm,
a chief, and he is 100% a true believer in the Constitution. And I don't understand why there's not more of that where they can coexist, where they can effectively do their job and protect the public while observing people's constitutional rights.
yeah, well, it's
Unfortunately,
mhm,
it seems that many of them believe that they have to violate the Constitution or ignore the Constitution in order to do an effective job. And I
mhm.
just don't think that that's the truth.
Yeah, well, no, it's not. How often does that happen, Mike, where you run into situations where they're literally, slowing you down or stopping you from getting to the client and crossing the boundaries with the constitutional rights? How often would you say that happens?
Very often.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I run into more of that than you would think. Uh,
Well,
and
I guess it shouldn't shock me. I mean, the way things are these days and the way we're seeing the First Amendment, get trampled on in a lot of ways. So I guess
yeah.
I shouldn't be shocked, but
What we do in those situations, whether it's me or whether it's somebody else at my office or whether it's an investigator who's on the scene and trying to get access on behalf of our
mhm,
office, uh, we ask them every 15 minutes, "I'm
mhm,
counsel, I'm here to see my client." And when they say no, we make a note that we were
mhm.
denied access. So that
That's
ends up in a
okay.
motion if necessary. Sometimes it makes no difference in the long run, right?
Yeah,
Because the
yeah.
client did lawyer up and shut up. They didn't ask them any questions, so there's not really any evidence to suppress. Doesn't make it any more right, though.
Sure. But who knows what they're doing with the client, right? And they might be stressing them out or putting them in a room or, making them uncomfortable, I guess, to try to break down and start talking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be. I do find that more often than not, when they invoke their right to
Hmm.
silence and they invoke their right to counsel, even if they're denying me direct access, they're not continuing to ask questions
Okay.
because they know that's going to become subject of a
Yeah.
suppression motion,
Gotcha.
and they
Okay.
don't
Well,
want all
that's
their
good. That's
they
good.
don't want all their evidence being thrown out in court, right?
Sure. Sure.
So
Yeah. Well.
maybe they want to sort of throw a banana peel down and
Mhm.
and make
Mhm.
things more difficult, but they don't want to do something that's going to destroy their entire case.
Yeah, that's good.
Now, have you ever been inside of a jail? I know you drove me to jail one time, at least, right? In Philadelphia.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that's right. I don't think I've ever been inside a function like a. I've been inside like the penitentiary, then Philly Eastern State, the old one, but never like a functioning, you know, um, real jail. I've never been arrested and put in jail, and I've never been there to visit anybody. So yeah, never.
So you're arrested after a critical incident
Mm.
and you're charged with murder. Let's say, there are certain non-bailable offenses by statute, right?
Hmm.
Murder in the first degree, second degree, carry sentence of life imprisonment.
Mm.
So you've got that initial stage, and when you're going to be waiting for your next hearing, your preliminary hearing, people are often surprised with, and because we hear things all the time, you hear about how terrible prisoners are treated. And I think that unfortunately, most people who are part of the law abiding community, they hear that and they don't think very much of it, right? They
Hmm.
think, yeah, well, who cares? Don't go to jail. Don't be a criminal.
Right.
But that now you're in that situation for no reason other than you had to defend yourself or you had to defend somebody in your family. And now you're in a position where you're not really being treated like a human being.
Hmm.
What do you think the conditions are like in these jails? What would your guess be?
I I can't imagine they're that great. I have talked to people, here living here in Philly, and I like to go out on the street and talk to people, and I've heard some pretty horrendous things about the conditions in some of the prisons, even locally here in Philly. So, doesn't sound great. And I've talked to some people who work in the penitentiaries as well, and doesn't sound like a great job. A lot of those guys are pretty depressed, and it doesn't sound good. I've never seen it for myself though. Like I know you've been in there. What have you seen, Mike? What is it really like?
Oh, I've been a lot of them.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can tell you that regardless of whether you think you're a tough guy and you can handle the violence and
Hmm.
everything like that, you've seen it on TV, you can't see the smell through the
Mm.
television set and the disease that's in there,
Yeah.
HIV positive blood that's on the walls. And
Oh, wow. Wow, that's crazy.
it's not a place that you want to spend one night, let alone the rest of your life. And
Right.
if you mess up, I think people don't understand this, that as a gun owner, right? People purchase firearms for the purpose that, God forbid it came down to it, you'd protect yourself, your loved one. You really have to understand that if you're on the wrong side of the law with that, then that's
Right.
going to become your home for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's
And there's
crazy.
no ifs, ands, or buts about it for the rest of your life.
Mhm.
And it's a real wake up call to a lot of these people. And we've dealt with a lot of these in recent memory, but we have people sometimes who are like, I can't believe they're going after me for this.
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
what did you think was going to happen?
Mhm. Mhm.
I might agree with you. I might agree that you were justified, but what did you think was going to happen? People think that if you do have to defend yourself, the police show up and they give you a medal and they put you on a stage. And
Right. Yeah, not too often. Yeah. every now and then in the right, in certain places you'll see that, but it's like a rarity, right? But people
This has
see that
always
like
been
that.
reinforced for me time and time again that no matter how much of a dirtbag the person is that is ultimately killed, even if it's a vicious, vile animal of a human being, there's going to be somebody who comes out talking about how much they love them, family member, even, estranged family members, like an ex-wife who they haven't been together for 20 years will come out crying.
Sure.
And they didn't have to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it's a crazy situation. Not a good
Stacks Farm
situation.
says prisons, jails are terrible between the people guards, filth is torture, bed bugs eating you alive.
Yeah. They're on the rise too. The bed bugs are on the rise in Philly.
Yeah.
Not a good situation.
Oh man. We got Jeremy Miller says, I have a friend who got sepsis in a jail and lost his arms and legs. It was after Brevard County sheriffs beat the crap out of him. He was having a seizure and they thought he was on drugs.
Unbelievable. Yeah, you hear those horror stories.
Yeah. So that's one aspect of it. It is definitely anything but a picnic. And not to mention the stress that it puts your family under, right? You're involved in one of these situations. If you're married, your spouse, you see a lot of people get divorced in the aftermath of these situations.
Yeah, for sure.
Your parents go through a whole lot. I see family members having medical issues. Like the mom ends up having a heart attack or something like that.
Yeah, no, it's just
it's a very, very stressful scenario.
Leaves a wake of chaos. Yeah.
You,
the time I dropped you off, Mike, was at that older prison up in the Northeast. Are they still using the older cells in there, or is it like modernized when you went inside? Because it looks like, an old castle or something when you go up there. I don't know how many of the listeners have been up in the Northeast at that.
Where we go, it just looks like almost like a high school cafeteria.
Oh, really? Okay.
Where we go, yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, maybe like an older high school cafeteria, but
yeah, I wonder what the cells are like they're in. Because you look at that place from the outside, and
unfortunately, I'm not hanging out in cells when they send me into this place.
They don't let you go in and stay a few nights, Mike.
You know what? I'm just gonna stay.
Can I just hang out here with my client for a few days? Yeah. That'd be an interesting experience, though.
Stacks Farm says that there are strains of MRSA that are untreatable, totally resistant to antibiotics. They have to cut it out. It leaves a big hole.
Oh, wow. Jeez, that's crazy.
That's rough.
Yeah.
That's rough.
Yeah. No, our bodies are fragile. You get exposed to the wrong thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not a situation that anybody ever wants to be in. And sometimes we don't discuss with people the importance of learning de-escalation techniques and things of that nature, right?
Sure.
Because even we teach the law a whole lot. That's my area of education, where I teach people what does the law say about what is versus is not justified. But there's sometimes a difference between can I and should I. Right?
Definitely a big difference. Yeah, sure. And then you talk about the few seconds before and after, right?
Yeah. Randy says, come on, my cousin Vinny got great sleep in jail. Oh, yeah, that's because he had a loudmouth Italian wife at home.
There you go. That's pretty funny.
There have been many Italian men who have gone to jail voluntarily to get away from the loud wife. I'm just kidding about that, obviously.
That's right. Yeah. That's funny.
DG wants to know what happened to the guy and the cops in Jeremy's story. We got quite a few horror stories in the comments. I hate to say it, but I'm glad that people are telling these stories, because at least these folks have that understanding of how bad it is and how you never want to go there and you want to avoid it at all costs. It's almost, to some degree, have you ever taken a defensive driving course?
I've done some of that a little bit. Yeah.
And when you're taking these defensive driving courses, it's really not about, oh, well, just follow the traffic laws and you'll be okay, right?
Sure.
You have to expect that anything that can go wrong will go wrong.
But yeah, that's right. You need to.
And it's not about, oh, well, even if this happens, I had the right of way, so I don't mind
Yeah.
getting in an accident, right?
Right. Yeah. You got to kind of be ready for whatever. Yeah.
So it's about taking like multiple steps ahead to avoid this from taking place, even if it's not necessarily your fault.
Right.
And it's not about having done something wrong.
Hmm.
You can get into a car accident where you've done nothing wrong. And if you look back and you say, okay, well, if I could turn back the clock and do something differently so I didn't get into the accident at all, would I do that? Sure.
Right.
And you could have the attitude, well, I shouldn't have to do that. You're right. Maybe you shouldn't. And in a perfect world, you wouldn't.
Exactly.
But we don't live in a perfect world. And so you have to take these extra measures, or at least it would be in your best interest to take these extra measures.
I hear it's going to be perfect after the Great Reset, though, Mike. You know?
Oh, yeah. I don't even know what we can and can't talk about without getting kicked off.
Yeah, I know. I just realized that after I said that, but I hear people saying it, so whatever. I'm joking.
You're joking.
Yeah, I'm just joking.
You're just joking.
Yeah, everything I say is a joke.
People are often also surprised at how long the criminal justice process takes. Rich has a shooting case where it happened in May, I believe.
Oh, yeah?
Maybe April.
Okay.
And it's set for trial in March right now.
That's a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's actually that's pretty quick if you
not too bad compared to
shooting case. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Sure. Like you could be found innocent and then but your whole life is destroyed because you can't go to work and you can't take care of your family and all that, right?
I had a case where I think it was August of 2019, maybe. And it took like a year and a half before we got to the hearing for the motion to dismiss.
That's insane. Well, it's I mean,
unfortunately, that was the end of the road for this one, because if it wasn't, then okay, now you're scheduled for trial when? Months from now. And then maybe you show up to call the list and they say, oh, well, the officer can't make it that day, so this is continued out again.
What happened to your right to a speedy trial? Isn't that like one of your rights too, or whatever?
Yes. We've had some cases dealing with speedy trial and statutory requirements in terms of bringing you to trial. And it seems like judges do all kinds of gymnastics to avoid that issue. We had a case that ultimately we did get dismissed.
Yeah, I mean, is there some sort of time frame where you can just be like, hey, listen, like, this is
sure. Yeah. And we laid it out we had a case once in Philadelphia, and for Philadelphia municipal trials, they hold the municipal trials for misdemeanors. What happened with this case was initially charged as a felony, and Rich and I went to the preliminary hearing. We got all the felonies kicked out of court, so they sent us back to municipal court. We showed up multiple times, and in Philadelphia, they have this thing where if the prosecution requests a continuance and the judge doesn't want to give them any more continuances, they say, okay, but I'm marking it must be tried, meaning next time you come back, it's got to be tried or I'm throwing it out of court.
Right.
And that's really just a Philadelphia term, I found out, because
oh, really? Okay.
I was out of county one time and I said, could you mark it must be tried? And the judge looked at me like I had 10 heads. Oh, I'm sorry. In Philadelphia too much. No more continuances, maybe? Last continuance?
Yeah, how do we word this, Your Honor?
And so we had one that was marked must be tried, I think 3 times in a row. And I remember saying to the judge on like the third one, excuse me, maybe it's because I'm from out of county, but could you explain to me what must be tried means? Because do you guys really mean like should be tried? Probably should be tried.
Is there like a three strikes you're out policy on that, or
what's this must? Could somebody define the word must for me?
Right. Did you
And
guys
one of
forget?
the excuses was so totally ridiculous. We got there and they said, well, the officer's on vacation.
Well, it was.
I said,
Must
the
have
officer was served with a subpoena, right? Did you serve
Wow.
the officer with the
Right.
subpoena, Commonwealth? Because that
Yeah.
was your job, right? Yes, we
Yeah.
served him with the subpoena.
So
So,
you
Your
didn't
Honor,
show up.
from what I'm hearing, if my esteemed colleague is telling the truth, which I have no reason to believe they're not, that this officer was either served with the subpoena knowing he would be on vacation and didn't tell anybody, or he was served with a subpoena and then decided to go on vacation instead.
Right.
So could
Which
somebody
one is it?
explain to me why we're being punished for this? Well, why
Yeah.
this is our problem?
Unbelievable.
We did ultimately get that case dismissed.
Well, I
but-
would hope so. My goodness.
well, it wasn't on that. It wasn't at that.
Really?
Hearing.
Gee,
It
that's
wasn't
crazy.
at that.
It's
hearing.
just so. It's the horror stories that I hear from you. They're the horror.
Yeah.
The real horror.
And
People's
sometimes
lives are on the
after
line.
weird ones like that, I get people like, "But this isn't fair."
Yeah.
I get it, man. You heard me
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
I agree.
Life isn't fair, right?
I'm
Life
clearly
is
on
not
your
fair.
side. I
Mhm.
clearly think we're right and they're wrong.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I'm not the one wearing the black robe.
Yeah.
So
Would you ever be interested in doing that, Mike? Would you ever want to be a judge?
wearing the black robe?
Yeah.
No, thank you.
What if you just showed up to court with one on? Would that be an issue? Or
Just showed up with a black robe. Oh, look who's checking in, CB. Give him a hey now.
Hey now, CB. Welcome.
Hey
to the
now,
show.
CB.
Hey
Hey
now.
now.
Is it like literally? I mean, I know you wouldn't do this, but what would happen if an attorney showed up in a robe? Like, is that a formal or is it just kind of like?
It's like wearing white to somebody's wedding, right?
Yeah, right. But is there a rule about that? Like, could you get in
I've
trouble as a
never had to
lawyer?
look for a rule about that.
Yeah.
I have never been sitting there like, I wonder if I'm allowed to wear a black robe to
What if-
court. Let me see
what if
if
you
there's a
showed-
rule against it.
What if you showed up in a black robe and a big wig, like they used to
Hey,
wear,
the old school wigs.
and you had your thing, like your mallet.
And Jeremy said, "Do you think it would be good if I went on vacation on trial date?" The judge would be okay with that, right?
Yeah, that's the thing about it. That's the thing, right? That's exactly.
That does get frustrating. The double standard.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if he didn't want to be here, we're not begging him to be here, Your Honor. Seriously.
Yeah, right. Maybe he doesn't feel so strongly about the case. Then.
Well, if he didn't want to bring the case, he didn't have to bring the case. If he
Mhm.
didn't want to be here, then there's a simple solution to that.
Yeah.
Stack
Wow.
says, just imagine waiting while in jail and years go by. Yep.
Well, and all these poor people who get convicted and then later are found not guilty, especially with the DNA evidence and the the more modern forensics. So that's just horrible that happens, especially with the way the system was set up.
What's that?
That innocent people end up in jail for these types of charges.
Mhm. Now, the DNA, when it rules somebody out, it's very good, but
Mhm.
there are also misconceptions about the definitive outcome based upon DNA, right?
Mhm.
People hear DNA and they think, well, the case is over.
Right.
And if you've ever been educated about this stuff, that's simply not the case. And I encourage people to look into this, take some kind of online course or watch some kind of online lecture, because a lot of times you're dealing with partial profiles. And ultimately, the way it can work sometimes is sort of like a license plate. So,
Mhm.
Chris, if you've got a partial profile, I want you to picture it like we got a picture of the license plate, but it's only half the license plate.
Yeah, right.
Right. So we've only got the first few characters of that license plate. So let's say the first 3 letters are 1, 2, 3, and we could go letters and numbers, or we could do all numbers. So let's just say it's 1, 2, 3. So if they got the picture and it's 1, 2, 3, and Chris's first 3 are 1, 2, 3, your license plate starts with 1, 2, 3. Does that mean that you did it, Chris?
Oh yeah, 100% guilty. Yeah, I'm guilty.
Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Mhm.
So what it shows is that you're not excluded. It
That's
shows
true.
that, well, this could be Chris,
Yeah.
but it could also be a number of other people.
Like one in if there's 3 digits left, I think there's 1 in 1,000 chance it's somebody else, or it's 1 in 1,000 chance it's you, right?
Now, on the other hand, if you're fortunate enough that the first 3 of your license plate are 124, then we could say it's definitely not Chris, right? So that's how you get people exonerated, get
Exclude,
them out
right?
of there, right?
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
excluded.
No, it's a good
But
way
the
to
idea that
describe that.
because there's a match on this partial profile, I say match in air quotes, that's the end of the story. It's simply not true. But
Yeah,
people have been conditioned over the years to hear, well, they found
sure.
DNA. That means that it's the guy. The case is over. We don't have
Yeah,
to hear anything else. Not to mention how DNA can be transferred so easily. They've done
right,
tests with this, like with glitter. Put a little piece of glitter on somebody's hand, see it get transferred all over the room, and then
right.
somebody else ends up with the glitter on them.
Yeah, definitely the techniques for gathering it and the location and all that. Yeah,
Yeah.
crazy.
How
People's
did we
lives
get?
are on the line with this stuff. It's pretty wild. God, sorry to hear about that, Rita.
Rita
Wow.
says, I wish my brother had a firearm with him when he was shot 15 times with a 9mm. Maybe he would be alive today.
Yeah,
That's
wow.
horrible.
Sorry to hear that. Wow.
That's horrible. That's a lot to go through for a family.
That is.
There's some bad people out there.
That's the problem. But but they blame the guns, right? So, but we know it's a people problem. Yeah. There's a lot of laws already in place to prevent somebody or make it illegal, I should say, for somebody to do that. But but we know the criminals don't follow the laws.
Let's ask Russ what he thinks about the criminal justice system.
Yeah, let's talk to Russ. Where's Russ at?
Is Russ around?
Hey now, Russ.
Hey now, Russ.
Hey now, ladies and gentlemen, Russ the producer. Go ahead, Russ.
Russ, tell us what you think about the criminal justice system.
Tell us what you think. I think that's interesting, Russ. I would probably agree, but I'm not sure what you said there.
I will say this from an attorney's perspective, from the minute one of these cases starts, it's totally exhausting.
Yeah, talk more about that. You were touching on that earlier. Like, what's it really like?
Because you end up at the police station all night and then all day, the following day, maybe into the night. Then sometimes you'll have cases where they bring the charges the following day, and then you end up with the bail hearing, the preliminary arraignment, after midnight. So now you've been awake for 48 hours. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. Most people,
for how important it is too. The system is just so crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an exhausting experience. And I think people don't understand why criminal defense costs so much for these kinds of cases. They say, oh, well, why does it cost $200,000 or whatever? That's going to take up a significant portion of your life for a significant period of time. And frankly, if a lot of people understood what it's like to go through the process, I think there would be a substantial portion of the population who would say, you could offer me $1 million or $2 million or $3 million, and I'm not doing that.
Yeah. No, it's a life-altering scenario for so many people. Yeah.
Well,
not in a good way.
And just the representation aspect. It's certainly a high-stress occupation, and it could take years off your life. So it can be exhausting. But the people in those situations think about, like, how would I want my family member to be represented if they were under those circumstances?
Yeah.
You'd want, and that's how we treat those things.
Exactly.
Anything else?
Well, before we wrap up,
Rita says the trial was televised down in Florida. The guy had lung cancer and died in jail.
Oh, geez, yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, it takes too long.
Michael Clay says U.S. Law should have any classes scheduled in New Hampshire this year. You can find out by going to gunlawseminar.com. I don't know. I have not checked New Hampshire schedule in quite a bit. Go to gunlawseminar.com. That'll have a schedule for all different places. Any of our Lancaster County listeners, we should be at Moore Saturday morning, Moore Range, Lancaster.
Mm-hmm. Gunlawseminar.com.
Chris, anything else?
Well, maybe I'll talk a little bit more about it next week, but just real quick, noticing some things with the economic situation and the stuff going on with BRICS and the US dollar. We've talked about on the show quite a bit. Tune in next week. Maybe I'll do a little bit more of a night update. Yeah, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, they've all been getting together to no longer use the US dollar for quite a few transactions. And some of those things are starting to go into effect. And also I'm hearing some rumors that JP Morgan and some other banks may get their credit ratings decreased, which would be pretty impactful on our economic situation and what's already going on with inflation. And so I think we're getting closer to the precipice of a major banking crisis and, the beginning of a true Great Depression. So anyway, tune in next week and I'll give you a little bit more information.
Oh, that's all.
That. Yeah, tune in next week. Maybe between now and then.
Oh, Randy's got a crazy one. Randy says in 2003, one of my dearest friends was strangled to death in her third trimester of pregnancy by her boyfriend. He stuck him in the closet for 5 days before he turned himself in. That's wild.
Insane. That's insane. Wow. That's nuts. Sorry to hear about that. Jeez.
Wow.
See, it's a crazy world these days.
Says next November, people better wise up.
Yeah, well, yes.
Agnew says that would make a good seminar. The first 24 hours after discharging your firearm. I like that. Maybe even the first 48, because there's that television show about the first 48. You ever see that?
Yeah, that is a good idea.
Where they're doing the investigations. Maybe the first 48 after.
Be interesting to have some people on who are willing, and I think a lot of people wouldn't want to necessarily go on a show and talk about it, but maybe some people who have truly been in that situation come on and talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing, it is difficult because I get people approach me all the time. Hey, can you come on with one of your clients from one of these cases? Generally,
most people don't want to be in the public.
It's no. It's, this person is trying to move on with their life. This was beyond a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
They want to forget it ever happened.
This is why you don't hear. No, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Yeah, but on their end, they're like, oh, well, we want to hear the story about how they were able to save somebody, and we want to hear the story about how, they went through the criminal justice system, came on the right side, and everything like that. Dude, it's something you never want to even partially relive when you're done with it. Period.
Right. Definitely. No, not something that would be enjoyable for anybody in that situation. That's also, I think, why you don't hear about all the legal daily uses of firearms for self-defense, because most people don't want to get in the media and talk about it. And also the way the world is right now, it's not like they point out those figures that you talk about from the CDC at the seminar with how many self-defense incidents really take place daily or yearly.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Anything else for the good of the order? Russ is still gone.
Too funny. He's probably having some hot pockets. Russ, the producer, ladies and gentlemen. So no, I'm good, my friend. Thank you. I know you've been working extra hard lately, and you're busy. So keep it up, and good show. Peace and love.
Thank you, everybody in the Mike G in the Morning family. If you think any of your friends, or your family, or your barber, or your Uncle Jerry, or your dog catcher will enjoy the Mike G in the Morning program, don't be afraid to share that link. Or even share one of our shorts that we've been putting on YouTube. Maybe that's a good way to introduce them to the Mike G in the Morning program. And we'd love to grow our Mike G in the Morning family. I appreciate each and every single one of you every single week. Jeremy says you wouldn't want a client to say something that could be interpreted as incriminating either.
Mm-hmm.
I try to answer as many comments as I possibly can, even while we're doing the show.
Yeah, no.
But that'll be all for today.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
That's it for today. What's that?
I said thanks
What was
everybody
that?
for joining you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's all time we got for today. Stick around for We the People, the Constitution Matters. Pastor David Whitney, Professor Phil Duffy. I'll be joining. No, I won't be joining this week.
Mm.
We'll have to cut that one more time. That's all time we got for today. Stick around. Yeah, I got you laughing in the background.
Sorry.
That's all time we got for. Oh my goodness. That's all time we got for today. Stick around for We the People, the Constitution Matters. Pastor David Whitney, Professor Phil Duffy. We miss you, Ellie. Daddy loves you.